So, hello, how are you? How is it?
I'm great. Still doing well. Good to be back.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming back. So, yeah, I guess that means you had an okay time last time.
I had an okay time last time. I kind of would have hoped maybe that we were post-pandemic when we did this again, but apparently we're going to drag this out.
Yeah,
for a little while longer.
I got my hand slapped the other day by my wife when I was like, now in a post-pandemic, people are, no,
We're not
we are
there.
not.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, it's
So one of the reasons that I wanted to have you back on,
Yeah.
aside from the fact that it was a great conversation last time and
fun.
really enjoyed it, is because you are an economics professor, a doctorate in economics.
not the good kind of doctor, the fake kind.
And, last couple of weeks, debt, and are we going to, raise the ceiling?
Right.
And all of that good stuff comes up. And, depending on who seems to have more votes, they seem to
Right.
be kind of in control of everything. But yada, the debt ceiling was raised at least until December.
Early December. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. So last I checked, and I would ask you to corroborate, it was about 26 trillion.
I was going to say 26 or 27 trillion is what
Okay.
the actual debt is and is headed for. If it's not at 27 yet, it's very close.
Within the hour.
Yeah, it could be, right? We could just tick over and wait. Yeah.
I mean, we'll just. So with that, should we be worried? Is it a political football or where is it in our our local?
So you should be, and this is the way I look at it. You should be really worried that people do dumb stuff with the debt ceiling because the debt ceiling is dumb. You should be less worried about the fact that there's $27 trillion in debt. That's a huge number, but it's less problematic than it seems. The debt ceiling is pure political theater that's dumb.
Okay.
So the fight over the debt ceiling is dumb. There's
what you're
no
saying
other word
is-
for this. So the debt ceiling isn't a limit on. The debt ceiling works this way. If you had $12,000 in credit card debt, okay, and you just instituted your own personal debt ceiling of $10,000, then the equivalent of what the government is doing is you'd call up Citibank or whoever holds your credit card debt, and you'd say, oh, by the way, hey, just to let you guys know, I have a personal $10,000 debt limit, so I won't be paying you the extra $2,000.
Oh,
And they'd say, really? Good luck with that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not how this works, right? That's fantastic that you tell yourself that you have a $10,000 debt limit, but you owe us $12,000. You spent that money. So the debt ceiling works the same way. The government has plans and is on track to spend more money and need to borrow more money than the debt ceiling. Okay, the same people who are arguing that we should have a debt ceiling passed the laws to say we should spend the money to spend more than the debt ceiling. So this is just dumb. The debt ceiling doesn't stop us from spending. It doesn't stop us from passing a new law to spend more. It is completely and utterly ineffectual, other than potentially creating the biggest financial crisis you've ever seen, 2008, 2009 times 20.
okay. So that kind of plays into kind of the next thought of, we hear about the concern if we default, quote unquote.
Right.
And what is a default formally? And then why would it be 20 times worse than 2008?
So let's say we get to December, they don't pass the debt limit, they don't increase the debt ceiling, and they tell the Treasury Department, all right, you can't go past 27 trillion, right? Fine. But Treasury has, Social Security checks us in, they have to pay Department of Defense people, they have to make all these payments. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, well, I can't pay off the interest on all the debt, and I can't pay off the bonds that are coming due in December in completion. Now, it's not that they can't pay any of them. They're like, I can pay 98 cents on the dollar or 99 cents on the dollar. The issue is that now everybody who bought those is like, whoa, wait a second. I put my money in treasury bonds, which in many cases, like pension funds and stuff, are legally required to put them in treasury bonds because they're safe. And so now they're only getting 99 cents on the dollar of the payments. So they're earning less for their the retirees or their investors or whoever. And the problem is the Treasury then has to, what do they give everybody 99 cents on the dollar? Or do they pick 1% of the bonds and be like, we're just not going to pay you at all?
Oh, man.
Right. And so it's not that like nothing gets paid out on Treasury bonds. They don't lose all value. I'm like, oh, forget it. We're not going to pay. It's that now there's uncertainty about whether you get paid and how much. Treasury bonds are essentially I don't think it's a stretch to say they're the fundamental building block of the entire financial system, right? Banks trade them, pension funds, investors trade them. They're like money, and they're considered secure. They're considered good collateral for other securities. So if they lose their certainty, if they become risky, if they become unknown what they'll pay off, essentially a whole bunch of financial transactions just shut down.
Shut down immediately, or?
Yeah, because now I don't know whether you're getting paid, and why am I going to take your Treasury bond? What if I'm one of the 1% that doesn't get paid? I have to revalue them because now at least I know I'm only getting 99 cents. It's a disaster, and it probably brings most of the financial system to a full screeching halt as banks and financial companies figure out, well, what the hell do we use instead? So it's a ridiculous own goal. It's full on cutting the nose to spite the face, shooting yourself in the foot. Pick your metaphor. It would be ridiculously stupid to not raise the debt ceiling. As the discussion you want to have about how much debt should we hold, and is 27 trillion a lot of debt, and how do you pay it back? Totally legit discussion to have. This is not the way to have that discussion.
So would you get rid of it altogether? I mean,
completely. It was a political theater when it got enacted. It has no meaning other than to potentially cause a default. It has no positive impact in the sense that it restrains spending.
Theoretically, but I mean, they've never...
Not even theoretically. Like, there's nothing that stops Congress from passing a bill that will blow past the debt ceiling. Nothing.
Right.
But then the debt ceiling, the Treasury is like, oh, by the way, we're getting close to that stupid debt ceiling that you guys set up. So here's an analogy of it. It's as effective as me coming out and saying, you know what, I need to lose weight. I'm only going to eat 2,000 calories a day. It's totally reasonable, right? It's a good idea. It's
right.
A good plan, right? I'd be healthier. This would be great. Okay. It only is in effect if you follow it, right?
Right. As long as somebody doesn't order queso.
If I go out and get a cheeseburger and fries, I've blown past it. It doesn't stop me, right? Me telling myself in the morning, I'm only eating 2,000 calories today. And everybody who's been on a diet knows this. You can tell yourself that in the morning.
Right.
It doesn't stop you from ordering something at the restaurant. You have to actually make the decision at the time. Mm-hmm. So the debt ceiling's like waking up and saying, you know what, I'm going to eat less today.
Just feeling
okay,
like...
cool, great. Good luck to you, right? It's just as dumb.
I think is the analogy extension maybe off if you're like, I'm going to eat less today, but oh, by the way, I just got a truckload of food delivered to the doorstep?
Well, in some sense, right? It's like the debt ceiling thing is dumb in the sense that it's like, I only want to eat 2,000 calories today. I went out and, it was somebody's birthday. It was my wife's birthday. So we actually, we had cake, right? And I blew past my 2,000 calories. Like, oh crap, I had a 2,000 calorie limit. Well, I'm just going to need to go throw up in the bathroom, right? So it's the equivalent of saying you should have an eating disorder, which is like, oh,
which is not good. Yeah.
This is not good, right? This is not the healthy way to deal with your weight. There's healthy ways to deal with your weight in terms of saying, oh, well, it was my wife's birthday and I ate 3,000 calories today. Well, I'm going to have to be careful the next couple of days. I'm going to run a little longer tomorrow when I run. I'm going to be more careful and get a salad at lunch for the next couple of days. That's the reasonable way to deal with this. And so the financial analogy would be, it's the pandemic. When we think this was good that we spent a bunch of money, right? With support checks. And I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that was the right move. So the right move then is like, oh, okay, I ate a lot. All right. So then you can look forward and say, well, then maybe what we should be doing in the future is thinking about how we might save money and to spend less. Totally reasonable. But that's not what the debt ceiling's doing. It's essentially saying, go throw up in the closet.
And that doesn't sound good at all.
Right.
So where does the debt ceiling come from? Where does it first?
Political theater.
I mean, like
20, oh God, I'm old. 30 years ago?
oh, okay. So it's somewhat recent. I mean, it's not like it was back in.
No, it hasn't existed. It was political. I want to say it was mid 90s. It might have been. It was political theater. So like, oh, we're putting a debt limit so you could say that you were responsible and we won't, spend this money without actually having to tie your own hands. Whoever passes it, and I honestly don't even remember like which side or who passed it, but the clear motivations were, I want to look like I'm fiscally responsible with zero constraints. Right. This is I'm only going to eat 2,000 calories today. I'm going to tell that to my wife when I get up. I look like I'm really, like, look at me. I am being healthy. She's like, that's awesome, honey. And my wife's a nutritionist. So she's going to be like, great, here's some recommendations. I'd be like, yeah, look at me. And then I'm going to go get a cheeseburger. Nothing stops me from getting the cheeseburger. Like what you'd want to do is say, hey, honey, I want to eat more healthy. Can we please pull all the chips out of I want to throw away the chips. And when we go to the grocery store, I want to buy healthy food. That would be restraining my own behavior.
Right.
But just waking up and saying, I'm going to eat healthy.
Just hoping that it goes less.
Doesn't cost me anything.
So, are we close to calling like Dave Ramsey so we can get, that debt snowball going? Like, I mean...
No, so the debt ceiling's dumb. Should we be worried about the size of the debt? Not really. I mean, it's a big number, right? $27 trillion is a big number. It's a big country.
Yeah.
It's a big economy. So let me put it this way. So whether that's a lot or too much, right? Think of it this way. The analogy of a government to a business is bad, but let's think about this as if it was a business. So let's take a number that's really big, $27 billion. So think of a company around here, Chevron or somebody. That's a big number. And it's probably a big number even for Chevron. So if I told you Chevron had $27 billion in debt, is that a lot?
Sounds like it could be.
It's a lot of money, right? Like just in absolute terms, it's a crap ton. I believe that's the official word for it. It's a crap ton of money. But is it a lot for Chevron to have $27 billion in debt? Like, how would you assess that? You dig into their finances. And the questions you'd want to know answers to are, could you make the interest payments? Right? If you can make the interest payments, okay.
That's a good start.
It's certainly not a burden then, right? Are you losing money every year because you're paying, right? Like, are you literally, Chevron got negative profits because they're paying so much in interest or not? That'd be one way to assess it. And the other way is, well, is it all kind of coming due at once, right? Like you think of them having corporate bonds out there for $27 billion. A dangerous situation would be, well, we have these bonds and they all come due, in 2022, on the same day. So we got to come up with $27 billion in cash on December 31st, 2022. That would be tough, right? Because any company's not going to be operating to hoard up that much cash. So you'd look at those two things and you'd say, well, if neither of those is happening, if they can make the interest payments, no big deal, and they aren't all stacked up in the redemptions all at the same time, then you're fine, right? Like you can probably roll over, if it's some of it comes due every year, you can probably roll it over as long as you're a going concern because your interest payments aren't too high. That's probably not a big deal. You're fine.
Right.
And you might compare it to their assets, right? And they're like, well, do you have a lot of assets? Or is this $27 billion a lot? Well, I don't know. We got $80 billion in assets. Well, it doesn't sound like that much then.
Right.
So you'd want to apply the same metrics here, which is not is $27 trillion a lot, is could you make the interest payments? The interest payments on the debt in the U.S. right now, I'm going to say $300 billion. I'm probably a little under. It's probably like 330 billion.
Considerably less than 26 trillion. But
right, just because 26 trillion is the face value. Right. And this is the interest payment. It's the same as your mortgage, right? Like my mortgage is hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a month or a year. I pay thousands of dollars. I make the interest payments.
Yeah, I guess the headline is always thinking that, once we default and we owe all that money
we
at once.
We have to pay it all back at once. And that's not the case, right? We owe 300 some billion a year. Probably 350 at this point, whatever the exact number is. That's totally reasonable within the scope of what the government collects in taxes. It's a big number. It's half of what we spend on defense. It's a third of what we spend on Social Security. It's half of what we spend on Medicare. So it's in the scope of the government's budget. It's actually not that big of a number. It's not even top three. So we can make the payments. And the $350 billion, you're like, oh, can you sustain that? Well, sure. I mean, the taxable income in the United States is 20 some trillion dollars a year. And you can tax that at whatever rate you're taxing it at. You can cough up $300 billion without too much of trouble. So from that perspective, we can keep making the payments. Does the $27 trillion all come due on the same day at some point, like 5 years from now? We're like, oh crap, we got to come up. No, they roll it over. Like the Treasury may be the most sophisticated CFO office in the world. It's 3-month bills and 6-month bills and 1 years and 10 years and 30 years. And it's all optimized so that there's always a little bit coming due at a time, and they roll it over. And so that, of that 27 trillion, next year, maybe $1 trillion comes due over the course of the year. And then they roll most of it over, which is what Chevron would do if they had $1 billion in debt coming due. And then the last thing is it a big number compared to the assets? Well, what are the assets? And this is the hard part for the government side, right? If we treat it as a business, these are the liabilities. What are the assets? The government doesn't have a lot of what you would think of as traditional assets, but every road is an asset of the government. All the federal, interstates and things like that. There's a bunch of airports, defense bases. The U.S. government owns something like $17 trillion in land.
Oh, wow.
Right. Like they own most of Nevada, and big chunks of Utah and all this. I mean, we have a ridiculous amount of assets against those liabilities. So there's, on just kind of a regular financial perspective, the debt's not actually that big.
Right.
It just is a big number.
On its face, it is. So this is kind of putting on your political hat a little bit, but so does Congress want us to continue to think it's a big number? I mean, because I understand what you're saying, although it is a big number, in reality, there could be some measures to make over many years that goes to zero or however.
It's a number that people hook onto because it's tangible, right? We can talk about, and it's big, so it hits you in the face. It's $27 trillion.
Yeah, there's that whole ticker.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You can watch it tick up, and unfortunately, not everybody in the world is going to watch and or listen to this podcast and think through can we pay that or not? They think, oh my God, I have to pay back $27 trillion effectively tomorrow. Like, no. But it's useful politically if you want to spend more money. So if you're the Democrats right now, you're Biden and you're trying to push through infrastructure / whatever we want to call it, infrastructure bill. You want to say that's actually not a lot of money, right? You're going to make the arguments and say the things I just said. Okay. It's like, so actually the headline number is not the thing you should worry about. We can manage this. And I think that's right. We can argue about whether you want the things in that bill, whether those make sense, but they're right from the sense that as a debt thing, it's not a problem for loading up debt.
Right.
Okay. But if you're on the opposite political side of it, you're going to say, oh my God, that's adding too much to the debt. Not because you really financially care, but because it's useful as a club to beat the head of the opponent with.
Right.
I mean, and this happens.
It's political points.
Yeah. If you go the other side, it's like, should we cut taxes? That's going to balloon the debt. Well, yeah, but we just decided that that's not a big deal. So that's not the reason to oppose the cutting of taxes. That's a distributional question. I don't think you should give a tax cut to those people. So it's not a unique thing to anybody. I think the right in general tends to use it more as a bludgeon than the left, but it's a bludgeon that doesn't really make sense.
So if they do default, you alluded a little bit with the banks and the system and the industry would do, but what about locally for me, day one? Like, if they default on a Friday, what do I wake up to Saturday? Or
like your 401k being worth about, I don't know, 3/4 or half of what it was the day before.
Okay, because that's just because everybody's like,
everybody freaks out. Sell. This is a disaster. The financial system is going to melt down. I need to get into safe assets. And now there's no safe asset. So everybody's going to be selling out of the unsafest assets they want and trying to get into other foreign bonds. I mean, I don't even know. And I think the scary part is people don't even know what everybody be running around trying to buy into. And that's what scares me about the financial sector. So when they all don't know what to do, they all pull back. right? And they're like, well, I'm just going to literally sit on as much cash as I
Put
can.
it under the mattress.
Put it under the mattress. And so good luck refinancing your mortgage. Good luck, if you were thinking of buying a house, your mortgage rate's going to be 8, 9, 10% now, not 3 or 4. Getting a car loan, all of a sudden now you're going to be paying 12 or 15. If your credit card, is going to be your credit card payment, interest rate, which is, usually some market rate plus. Well, that plus just it went
Just got
plus
exponential,
a lot at this point. So that you wouldn't wake up and like that. It's not like meteors would be falling and the electricity would be off, but financially it would come to a screeching halt in the sense that credit would just, I think, disappear.
Would food still make it to the grocery stores?
And so as we've seen in the pandemic and stuff, and in the Great Recession, when the financial system starts to slow down, that's when you start to see real repercussions, because most businesses operate on some turnover and credit. Well, if the credit's not available, all of a sudden they can't keep going. So I think you would see significant disruptions, not the day of, right? But the next month when a supplier was like, hey, I need I'm not going to supply you unless I get my payment, right? They're like, well, I can't get the payment because I usually borrow it against the fact that I'm going to sell this stuff. And now all of a sudden I can't get that loan, or the loan is 12% from my bank as opposed to it used to be 2, right? Crap, I'm going to go out of business if I'm paying 12. So we forget that all these things are linked. So once that financial link goes, it's going to ripple into the real world eventually. So I think it would look a lot like the Great Recession, but faster. So it'd be some kind of weird combo of COVID, where everything happened immediately, and the Great Recession financial crisis, where it happened because of the financial system shutting down.
Yeah, I think now I'm understanding what you meant by the dumbness, but also the fact that they should just get rid of it, because it really...
It's not doing anything.
Yeah, because they're going to spend the money if they need to or not. And you wouldn't not spend the money because you got to, from what you're saying, the ramifications.
It doesn't impose any limit. It doesn't impose any real limit on legislation or spending.
Yeah.
They can pass anything they want. So that has no bite on that side. The only thing, it's like, you know what? I'm walking around. It's like I'm walking around with this grenade in my hand and the pin out. I'll be fine. Like, there's only bad things that can happen, right? Like, I could trip and drop the grenade and now I'm dead. The only thing about the debt limit is that it's walking around with a live grenade. There's no positive to this whatsoever. It's if all you need is a couple, intransigent senators to be like, we should just do it. And they're going to blow kind of everybody out of the water for nothing, right? For nothing. They won't have stopped us from passing legislation to spend more money.